Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt
And
Rose.
I'm Jessica Bun Bun.
Welcome to our reaction and review for the Pitt Season 2, Episode 3. We're now a significant chunk into the day, and I think to the surprise of no one, everything is going really, really badly. Doctors are getting more stressed out, but there are also a lot of unexplored questions that we're kind of left to think about after this.
Absolutely. I mean, they are really putting a lot of focus on motorcycles and
Yes.
accidents and people dying from them, and Robby lying about wearing his helmet for what reason? I mean, there's just a lot of weird things that are happening that I think deserves like a much deeper dive than what we've already done here at the
Yeah.
channel, where, we've already talked about him coming in to work without a helmet, passing by an ambulance that has its sirens going, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a crime, and then walks into the hospital with his helmet. And now here we are with this really heavy story for this episode about a motorcycle accident with a car. Somebody's dead from the motorcycle accident, and he is lying about wearing a helmet.
Okay, so we're going to get a lot more into that, but also Dr. Langdon, what's going on here with the ring? What's going on in your personal
Mhm.
life? We'll talk about that, but before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we are here throughout the season of The Pit,
Mhm.
breaking down these episodes, sharing our theories. We're having a really, really great time with you guys. Subscribing is just the best way to make sure you do not miss out on anything.
And if you did miss our first season reviews of The Pit,
Mhm.
we're uploading them right now to our memberships. It was something that we did on our Patreon last season, and we're bringing them over to our memberships here on YouTube. So if you join our memberships, it helps us here at the
Mhm.
channel, and you can check out our entire season 1 review of The Pit. We're also going to be covering coming up a whole bunch of stuff
Mhm.
on HBO with, House of Dragons coming up. We've got Night of the Seven Kingdoms we're covering right
Yeah.
now, Dune Prophecies, Euphoria, all kinds of stuff. So if you already have HBO, we're going to be here with all kinds of HBO stuff.
Thank you guys so much for your support. Like, we really do appreciate that.
Okay, let's stick with Robby.
Okay.
Robby, you are a doctor, and much like Kim Wexler over on Better Call Saul, you are driving down Bad Choice Road with no helmet. I understand that this is a state where you do not have to wear your helmet, but you are a doctor. You have very likely in your time seen what we just saw here, where there was an accident between a car and a motorcyclist. We've got the people in the car possibly being alive. That motorcyclist, nah, his brain is on the road. Like
Yeah.
his head is open. We're looking at his brain. He's gone. As a former funeral director, I've seen this on my table more times than I would like to say, of people that are wearing their helmet, because in Toronto you have to wear your helmet. There is no choice. There's no lane splitting like there is here in California, which is extremely dangerous, on top of you're not wearing a helmet. I don't understand it. But more so, I do not understand why the lie. Why, when you're asked, hey, don't you ride a motorcycle? Didn't you take this same motorcycle test? Yes, but I always wear my helmet. I was legitimately like, I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. I was like, why is he lying like this?
To me, a lot of it just comes down to, all right, you know that wearing a helmet is important. You already mapped out all the reasons why. Robby has certainly treated a number of people that are like this. So if
Or
you,
sent them off to see me at the funeral home.
yeah, so you're well aware of all this. Why were you just not wearing it in the first place? Is this
Yes.
because, I don't know, is it a compulsion of, I just want to feel the wind in my hair, on my face? I want to experience the element,
Oh,
which, let
bruh,
me,
your man life crisis needs to just wear a helmet.
okay, see, this is an experience I have as I say bicyclist, which is not even close to the same thing as a
Still
motorcyclist.
dangerous though.
It's very dangerous, but the thing is that, we live in California. I get so cold when I go out early in the morning that I'm wearing a ski cap, gloves, a coat, like all of these different things. This is Pittsburgh, and I understand it's Pittsburgh in July, but you're still out there really early in the morning. Like, aren't you cold, Robby, going this fast without the helmet on?
I don't know. All I know is like wouldn't want to leave my brain on the road. Like the
No.
most important part of your body, you're just gonna allow it to be like, boop. Oh, there's some gray matter, somebody says in the ER. I'm like, that's brutal. And even that is not enough for him to be like, you know what? Maybe I should wear my helmet. And here's where we get into the tinfoil
Yeah.
hat of it all. My theory is that because we saw him riding in no motorcycle helmet, saw him come in holding one because he's presenting that he wears a helmet. Here we have a motorcycle crash, motorcycle is dead. Him lying, I always wear my motorcycle helmet. Okay. That I think when he leaves the hospital at the end of this whole like season and he's going off on his sabbatical, he is going to be in an accident. And I think that next season, we're not going to have a time jump. We're just going to have Robby come right back into the hospital as a patient.
See, I feel like we are going to see him leave this season on a motorcycle. I don't know if this is just wishful thinking. I feel like
You're
he's
so optimistic.
I try. I think he's going to be leaving wearing the helmet. I think
I like that.
something over the course of this day is going to
I
happen.
like
You know, and the Pit's obviously such a warm, fuzzy show with people dying all the time and just horrible things
But
happening.
there are hopeful stories on
No.
the show, and I think that's why this show is as great as it is. It's a nice balance.
There is a really good balance. I feel like him lying represents that there's an element of shame that's going on here. Either that he is ashamed of the fact that he didn't do it in this moment and he can't bring himself to admit this to this other people, and maybe some of that is okay, don't act like me, act like somebody who is actually responsible. Or maybe it is hitting him really hard of, oh, I'm having to lie about this because of my own habits. Like, shouldn't I be ashamed of this?
Oh, my brother in Christ, just get off Bad Choice Road and wear a
Yes.
helmet.
It's something that is probably going to continue to drive us crazy for the rest of the season, just because of the fact that it is such a clear visual at the start of this season. And we know how
Yeah.
meticulous, to the point that they have all these medical experts on set, like constantly trying to make things as accurate as possible. You're not going to spend that much time on something at the start of this season for just like no particular reason at all.
And with that, let's get into Dr. Langdon.
Yes.
Where is your wedding ring? Okay. So lots of us out there have clocked that when he first showed up, he went to his locker, left hand up, very prominent, to try to open the locker, and it was locked. And we all remember that. He had to
Yeah.
go down to the bottom. He opened it up. There's a stinky lunch in there. When he tried to open up the top locker, no wedding ring. It's not there. But for the rest of his shift so far, wedding ring. And it's very, very prominent. When we had Dr. Mel fall on the ground, hit her head, he took a ice pack to put behind her head. And again, they were filming very prominently his wedding ring going past her face behind her head. And I was like, oh, okay, he is wearing a wedding ring. So tinfoil hat again.
All right. Here we go.
He got separated or is on his way to divorce, or he's divorced. Like, his marriage fell apart while he was off getting treatment. Whatever happened, whether it has to do with the treatment or not, or I don't know why their marriage fell apart, but they are not together anymore. I don't know why you would come in not wearing it, but then wear it. You're in doing all these different medical things. I would think that the opposite might be something you might want to do, is take it off so it doesn't get caught on something or whatever, scratch somebody, hurt somebody, whatever. But it's not that. He's putting it on in front of everyone for a show. He is not married anymore.
I'll admit,
Hello, love story with Dr. Mel. Let's go.
I was about to say that I
Take
know.
him to the Ren Fair,
Oh,
Dr.
don't.
Scurvy.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
Okay,
come on,
now
they're so cute.
they are really, really cute. I know there's a large contingent of Dr. Mel / Dr. Langdon shippers out there, of which Jess is apparently one, and I am learning this in real time. Now,
They're so cute.
they are really cute. Like, I do like them, and I would very much not like the idea of them getting together if Langdon was with somebody else. So if
No.
they're getting that part of it out of the way, I welcome that. Now, originally, I'll admit, there was this part of me that was thinking, okay, is this like a Game of Thrones Starbucks coffee cup incident all over again where they met? But I don't think that's the case.
Some people do think it
Yeah,
might be.
I don't think so. I thought about it. I like circled the possibility, but I kept coming back to, okay, the coffee cup thing was just something they forgot to take away from the set. This is, you're going to forget to put something on this show. Not only that, but a symbol of your fictional marriage on this show. It's too big a detail that for me they're going to forget. I even tried to entertain the possibility of, all right, is Langdon getting to the hospital or doing something before his shift that would require him to not wear his wedding ring because he's afraid of staining it or damaging it or whatever. I couldn't think of a possibility. If anything, I would feel like maybe he would take the ring off during his shift because there's so much crazy stuff happening, fluids, chaos, delicate surgeries, and you don't want to have something to happen to it there. I could see that. The opposite of it, though, is just it's a little bit too strange. And I do think there is smoke to what you're saying here, that something has happened in his personal life.
I just think that it's too much for him mentally to go in and deal with all the eyes on him that
Yeah.
of what he did, going through treatment, getting better. He's been on an apology tour at the hospital, make sure everybody knows what he did and that he is sorry for what he did. I think he couldn't handle on top of it also explaining that either he left his wife or his wife left him or that it crumbled during that same time.
Yeah.
I think it's too many personal things at work for him to have to deal with, and I think he's just deciding he's going to deal with it at another time. But another part of that smoke
Mhm.
that felt like, okay, something I think did happen at home is when he's apologizing to Dr. Mel for what he did. And was just like, man, I'm really sorry if I let you down and whatever. And a lot of this could be maybe his wife was like, oh man, you really let me down and left.
Mhm.
And the minute that Dr. Mel was like, you didn't let me down. You've never let me down. You could see the look on his face almost like he had heard somebody else tell him that he had let them down.
I think it's an interesting thought. It's something where there's a very clear delineation on this show between work life and personal life,
Mhm.
where it doesn't feel like for all the time they spend together, other than, characters like Dr. Robby and Noelle, who have certainly had their kind of casual
Right.
relationship, you go to work and then you go home. And there's not always overlap between these two things, where it feels like Mel and Langdon, they're kind of close at work. They're very friendly, but
Yeah,
then
they are.
that time away happens, and then Mel doesn't really know that much about what happened in that time away. So in all of this time, he's never really reached out to her. They simply meet, they get along at work, they do their jobs at work, and then you
Mhm.
go home and you go about your business. So that really does suggest to me that there's still a little bit of distance here, and he might want to perform and put on this particular role because it is a lot to sort of dump all this emotional stuff on everyone when he knows that he does need to do that apology tour. And I think he probably is expecting the worst, or he might even expect, and I know that this is very, very much not a good ethical thing, but the idea of him being in treatment, like it was certainly possible that all of these finer details could have been shared before he even showed up and he had to deal with the ramifications of that.
I think he also doesn't want to end up sort of going on this apology tour and being like, hey man, I
Yeah.
am actually really truly sorry. I let you down. I did this thing. I'm very sorry, to get overshadowed with also I'm getting divorced. So now there's a sympathy thing that's going to come with a true apology, and it can in some ways maybe tarnish it in some way where people are like, man, I was really feeling this apology until you threw the sympathy bomb on top of it that your wife left you or where your marriage fell apart. That's really sad on top of this. Like, now I feel guilty. I feel guilty kind of thing. I think he might just want to keep them separate so that his apologies are true.
Yeah, and the other thing with Langdon, he's a really good doctor. And I know that's
Yes, he
very
is.
generic to say, but I do think he's someone where going back to work was probably a really big driving force for him during
Yep.
his entire time in treatment. And that might be financial, that might be, oh, I really want to go back to
Mhm.
help people again. But I think we're seeing a person where he does want to do his apology tour, but he just wants to get back to doing things and helping patients. Like even what we saw in this episode, where there is the nose issue, where he's
Hmm.
taking the beads out of the nose and distracting with the virtual reality. Like there really was this wholesomeness about it. And he
Yes.
was so sweet with this kid and he was so helpful and being personable. And I was sitting here and thinking, this is the Dr. Langdon that we really, really love. He has something about him here that's really, really special.
Hmm.
So he may just not want to taint this with everything else, knowing full well this will probably come out in due time about his marriage. I think
Yeah.
eventually, if people start asking him enough specific questions, is he going to pull a Dr. Robbie and then just straight up lie about it
Yeah.
at that point?
Yeah, he might.
He very well might, or he may just be like, this is an organic moment. I'll talk about it now, but I want to move on because I like my job and I like focusing on
Right.
my job.
Yeah.
So this episode, it's really good because you have this Robbie mystery, you have
Hmm.
this Langdon mystery, and these are things that are kind of left to sit with us for a very, very long time. But then there's also sort of wedged in here, we have some of the typical medical stuff, but we get a sense even throughout all this that Noah Wiley, who also wrote this episode, I think he was really trying to take something in this episode and extend it beyond so it's, sort of linking to all humanity. He did this with the Hawaiian ritual in
Hmm.
season 1 that I know that I've seen stories of real doctors who have picked that up, but it feels like in this episode in particular, we have this patient comes in who shares a similar faith to Robbie, and they talk a lot about events that tragically a lot of the stuff in this episode, like this was a real thing that happened in
Yes.
Pittsburgh. This was not fictional. They brought this in for the show, but they sort of lean into this message of it doesn't really matter what your faith is, where you're coming from. We are still a city of people trying to help people. And
Hmm.
the way in which it's presented in this episode, I know it could be rather cheesy to sit here and say, oh, everyone's just going to get along. We're all going to be fine. But the way that they handled it, where you had a little bit of a deft touch here and there, you had a lot of sensitivity, but it never felt corny. It never felt
No.
hokey. It felt really, really emotional and really well played. Where I'm sitting here and feeling this is probably a 1 episode story. I don't know how much more of an update we're going to get on this, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I don't need this to linger like I do these other stories because I really appreciated how they sort of took all of that on.
Absolutely. I think they handled that in a way that was not, like you said,
Hmm.
really cheeseball or corny feeling or just feeling not authentic.
Yeah.
It was handled in a very authentic feeling way, not like, oh, we're all coming together, kumbaya. It was really like, hey, man, this horrible thing happened.
Yeah.
You guys really came out to help. And, we were really thankful for that.
It's such a weird dichotomy with this show and its realism because they had that whole story, which was based on really, really true things that happened. And they clearly did a lot of research into that.
Hmm.
But then they also did a lot of research into something that does not matter at all. I went down a Pittsburgh area fireworks rabbit hole because of Louis and all these people he's talking about. Everything he said is true, and it's just sitting here and blowing my mind. It's like, oh, like this city right next to Pittsburgh really is like the go-to fireworks place. Like, how did you guys think of all of this?
That's what the beauty of this show is. Like, even the story with Cassie, it was such a small thing that was brought up in this episode. And the way she handled it is the way I think many women have to handle this in the workplace, especially when you are working with the public,
Yeah,
where you just put on a grin and you kind of deal with it.
yeah,
Some women are okay to do that. Some women are not okay to do that. But Cassie having to deal with that older man who's just like, your beautiful eyes and flirting
yeah,
with you and all that. It's kind of like, I think a lot of women had to deal with that in service where you're just like, oh, thanks, whatever. And then it escalates. Now we're dancing with you and they're touching her and dancing around.
yeah,
She's got a smile on her face and seemingly trying to laugh or whatever because what else are you gonna do, right?
yeah.
And it's such a strange, uncomfortable situation that I feel like almost every woman has a story about where something like that has happened to them in their workplace with someone who's, we'll call them a customer or a
Hmm.
patient or a whatever, and you don't really know how to deal with it. So you just grin and bear it the best you can and excuse it away later on in your head. And I don't know if this is a story that'll come back. I don't know if Cassie was was actually like, you know what, I'm a go with the flow kind of girl. I'm
Mhm.
okay with it. But I'm really appreciate that they brought that up and showed it at all, because for me, watching it, it was really awkward watching this much older man flirting with her. She's clearly not interested. Then it's making some other guy chime in
Yes.
from the bed, which happens, right? One guy's in, another
Yeah.
guy's in. Now she's got two guys that are in on this. This guy's then in, and he's now crossed the border where now he's touching her and bringing her into this dance. It was so grimy to watch that scene. And I don't know if that's the way it was meant to be, because Cassie was trying to like laugh and smile or whatever, but it was really grimy.
I think this is what's so interesting about this storyline, because I do think it is going to come back in some shape or form. And the big reason why was that other person who started chiming in. And I think
Ugh.
they escalated the griminess in a really, I don't want to say good way, because we're talking about something that I felt was grimy too.
But I think happens a lot
Yeah.
to people.
It happens a lot to people. I like how they introduced it though, where at first you could say, okay, here's an old man who's doing something that, he's flirting,
He's
alerting.
flirting, yeah.
Yeah. And so you could kind of sit there and think, oh, this is innocent. He's just paying her a compliment. But
Right.
then it gets worse.
Yep.
And then it gets worse. And then it gets to the
Then
dancing.
he's touching her.
Yeah, it all just goes and goes and goes. And I feel like once we saw this happen, more than just a one-off in the episode, if it was just like a, oh, you're sweet or you have nice eyes, and then we never see it again.
Sure.
Yeah, I would, okay, this is just, an old man who's, doing a little bit of flirtation and he thinks that everybody's just going to think that it's innocent. But because it's continued on and it's continued on and that other person's there, I think it is going to matter. I'm not saying it's going to matter with these two individuals particularly, but it could be these situations escalate something where this happens again later, and maybe Cassie reacts differently to it than she would have had these things
Mhm.
not happened to her a little bit earlier in the day.
Right.
The story that I'm clocking at this point of something that's going to escalate more and more as it goes along is Dr. Santos, where I do feel like eventually she's going to get an element of comeuppance for some of her behavior around the hospital, which is a lot of different things. Yeah, there's the calling Javati crash, the annoying nicknames part of it, her overall arrogance, but there's also
Well,
the,
and there's also the putting it into, Victoria's head that she might be losing her position.
yeah,
Now Victoria is acting differently and sabotaging,
yeah,
her own position because, Santos is having a ha-ha to like, let me just pick at this and get in
yeah,
your head. I mean, that could torpedo Victoria's entire life, her
yeah.
entire career, everything she's worked for because of a ha-ha. I can't with Dr. Santos. I know that there's you guys out there being on the keyboards. I promise I've seen the comments. I completely understand that there are people out there that like Dr. Santos. I do not like her. She is a bully, and I can live with it if that's all she was, picking on her, being like, oh, you're Crash, oh, you're Huckleberry. Okay, fine, I can get through that. But it's still the workplace. Like, people have to come in here and work. And now she's taking it a step further, where she's digging into somebody's like feelings of insecurity about their job and making it that this person could lose their job.
Yeah, I don't think Santos is a good person. I'm gonna make that clear. Does she
No.
have moments where she's capable of good things?
Yes.
Sure, like with Whitaker and them, living together. I think there are elements of that to her. I think as a foil, she's somebody who, I don't want to say I like watching her, because I don't, and I root for something to happen where she will change her ways a little bit. But I think that journey, it could be interesting, especially through the lens of, we had this storyline with, Kylie, this young girl who comes in, that's been a big part of these first few stories. And we have seen that Santos is very impulsive when it comes to figuring out reasons why things are happening. And I do think she was running with the evidence of what she was seeing at first glance here. And
Especially with her own
yeah,
background, that's going to be the first thing she's going to jump to.
yeah, and I really understand that from her vantage point, that I'm going to go to this because I'm trying to protect this girl. I think in this situation, it was just, and it led to just, thankfully, this was not what was going on. And I think the father in this instance, He was upset about the accusations, but I think he's just
Yes.
trying to figure out how to take care of his daughter at the same time. But what I could see moving down the road, because this show did work really hard to show us that, okay, she had good instincts. She was wrong ultimately about what was really going on here, but I think everyone's going to move forward from this. I do kind of feel like there's going to be a situation later this season where her instincts are going to be wrong again. But this time around, either you're going to be dealing with patients or family members who aren't going to let it go at all, or she's going to jump to a conclusion because of her past when what's actually in front of her is not indicating that that's the case at all. And I think she's going to get a little bit reckless because of this and because of her past experiences at the hospital and also
Mhm.
in life.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think that they've foreshadowed it a little bit when we sort of had that back and forth with Robbie and Santos in front of Dr. Al. I think it was like episode 1 or whatever, where he was just like, okay, but make sure you go through it. Don't jump to conclusions, sort of thing. And Dr. Al's like, oh, is that something that she does? And Robbie's like, no, that's nothing that she does. But we all know that, yes, she does.
The one other thing I will say about this episode in particular is I don't know if this storyline's coming back either, but they
Hmm.
made a big meal, especially at the end of the episode with we had Mr. Cranky Pants, who has been in the hospital for these past few
Hmm.
episodes. It turns out that he's had a tumor, and that's caused some changes to his personality, and this led to the downfall of his relationship. His emergency contact comes in. She doesn't want to be removed as the emergency contact now that she understands what's going on here. I was so invested in this storyline at the end of all of this, where I was sitting back and thinking, what's going through her head right now? Like, and she felt like she had to get out of this relationship, and I understand why.
Yes.
But what is she thinking about it now? There's a part of me that wants to see that continue to be explored, but I actually feel like it's more realistic if it's not, where she just sort of goes off, lives her life, but has this knowledge of everything that happened, and maybe that's something that informs the future. But I don't think the pit is going to turn into, I don't know, some sort of twisted Hallmark movie where these two find a way to get back together after all of this.
Wasn't she remarried?
Yes.
She's with someone else. So this is not a Hallmark show.
No.
This is getting really messy, like something on Bravo.
Yeah.
Like, she needs to just be like, listen, if he needs me as an emergency contact, yeah, for sure. Please call me. I will be here for him. Now that I know what's going on, I'll be here for him. And now I know why things fell apart. Sometimes, you get divorced, you don't really know
Yeah.
all the ins and outs of what happened and why it fell apart, some of what's going on. But this is a huge reveal for her to be like, okay, do you think this could have been something that had to do with it? Yeah, it's a possibility. Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. And it's good to have some sort of, like, I guess we'll call it relief, because information is relief in a lot of ways. It's
Mhm.
better to know than to just be left in the dark wondering why.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of this show, and this is why it won all those Emmys, and it'll probably be a contender again, is that we have the Robbie story, the Langdon story,
Yeah.
Mel, what's going on with her. We have all these things that are long term, and we're really invested in those. But then we also have the story about Robbie's faith, and then this
Hmm.
patient where I don't ever need to see them again, but I still felt so drawn in, and it didn't feel like this is a show that's wasting our time because they
No.
need to have these case of the weeks.
Yeah.
But that is where we are coming out of the Pit season 2, episode 3. What do you guys think is going on with the Langdon? Married, not married? Give us your thoughts, your theories. Hit that subscribe button for more. And yeah,
Hmm.
if you guys do want to support us more, be sure to check out our memberships. We're covering Hijack there. We are posting our videos from the Pit season 1 there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will see you here next time.